Ellis Cashmore. He is a professor of sociology, and he joins me now from Birmingham in the UK. Thanks so much for being with us. Yeah, having heard that list just there, I mean, how would you rate what is happening right now with sports teams and players in the United States?
The difference is, Andrea, that in many of the examples that you've just shown, there was a specific goal in mind. For example, the end of apartheid. I believe, and most of the world believes, that the boycott of South African sport was instrumental in bringing down apartheid in the early 1990s. What we have at the moment is a less focused protest, in the sense that people are protesting against racism. They're not going to bring about the end of racism in any kind of terminal sense with this protest. And I suppose, and I hope I'm not going to sound too disheartening when I say this, but it's been several months now. May is when George Floyd was killed. And since then, we've had this spread of Black Lives Matter protests, people taking the knee, wearing T-shirts with slogans on them, all over the world. I mean, I'm talking to you now from Britain. We've had protests all throughout British sport. And what has it led to? Only last week, of course, another regrettable incident that has sparked off the whole protest all over again. So I'm afraid we have to conclude from the recent evidence that all the protests, international protests, didn't really work.
Okay, I mean, maybe they didn't work in the immediate to short term so far, but if we look over the course of decades, I mean, since some of those movements we saw in 1961, progressively, arguably slowly, it has gotten better. I mean, if you look at Colin Kaepernick, who was shunned, only now to really be seen as more of a hero and a civil rights leader in his own right, people didn't see that at first, but after time, they do.
And equally, we can go back to 1968 and the protests of John Carlos and Tommy Smith, who gave the Black Power salute at the Mexico Olympics. And they were banned from athletics for what was seen back then as a contemptible lack of respect for America. Over the years, over the decades, of course, they've been rehabilitated, and people now regard them as heroes. So yes, you're right, time has a way of changing our perspective on these matters. With the latest protest, I think everyone spoke with one voice. This was just wrong. But of course, history has repeated itself within months. So that's why I sound disheartening when I say that I'm worried that it really hasn't made that much impact thus far.
Yeah, thus far. But I mean, I'll repeat again, I mean, my hope is for the long term, because of course, when the South Africans protested against, the boycott back in the 80s, saying it's not fair to mix sports with politics, you're punishing the wrong people, it absolutely turned out to be one of the most effective tools in bringing about the downfall of the apartheid regime. Yeah. So, I mean, right now you might...
This idea any longer that sports and politics don't mix. They mix perfectly, and sport is a most effective political instrument in trying, not always successfully, but in trying to bring about social and political change. And so, obviously, I am with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I would throw my weight behind it, because it does seem a worthwhile protest. But here's an interesting piece of research that I read earlier today. The least engaged people in Black Lives Matter at the moment in America are whites.
Right. Okay. Ellis Cashmore, we're unfortunately going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.